Hello everyone, Tmmgamer here, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another one of my football talk videos. Now today's video is going to be focusing on the recent Champions League draw. The draw for the last 8 happened today. Some really intriguing draws, and if you haven't heard it, I'm going to run you through them now very simply. The first tie was FC Barcelona versus Madrid, Real Madrid versus Dortmund in the second tie, PSG versus Chelsea in the third, and the final tie is Manchester United versus Bayern Munich. And every single one of these has some interesting, backstory to it. Obviously, Barca Atletico, two Spanish rivals, had 3 draws between them already this season. That's a very tough one to call because obviously Barca, the established team, recent European champions, arguably the best player in the world, certainly one of the 2 best players in the world in Lionel Messi. Host of world-class players, great team. But then you've got Atletico, hungry. They've had a great season this year. Still in the race for the title in the league. And who would have thought that, late March, Atletico would have a realistic chance of actually grabbing the Liga title? Very unlikely for that to happen based on selling Falcao. Could they bounce back? They've had a good season, a very good team. That's going to be an interesting tie over 2 legs. Madrid-Dortmund, you'd probably nudge Madrid to win that, but again, Dortmund, very good team. Got to latter stages of Champions League several times. They've got to a final. Great young manager in Jurgen Klopp, very good team. They should give Madrid a great run for their money. But the 2 ties I really want to talk about are obviously the ones featuring the 2 English teams, because being an Englishman, watching a lot of Premier League football, seeing both Chelsea and Manchester United play in the Champions League this week and seeing both of them play recently. I saw Chelsea live play against Aston Villa at the weekend past. Seen Manchester United a couple of times live. What very interesting draws for both of them. I think Chelsea are going to be really happy with their draw because they've avoided the Real Madrid or the Bayern Munich. Chelsea looked very good against Galatasaray at home. They really did. And that is a very ominous sign for the rest of the teams in this competition because they beat a side which, admittedly they didn't turn up, but they controlled that game without really getting out of second gear, and that is terrifying. I mean, I had the pleasure of seeing Willian, Oscar and Hazard play live, and you don't appreciate just how good these players are until you see them live. I mean, the passing, the movement, the little touches, the intricacy, the development they have, and they're all so young and talented. And then when you bring in players like Schürrle off the bench, you've got Andre Schürrle on the bench. I mean, he would walk into most Premier League teams. They are a frighteningly gifted front 3. And you have to say, for all of the travails of Fernando Torres and Samuel Eto'o and Demba Ba, Torres has got a fantastic record in Europe at Chelsea. Samuel Eto'o turned it on against Galatasaray when it mattered. Their strikers do produce on the European stage, and for me, that's the only real question mark against Chelsea as a team, because they're very solid defensively. They've got a good keeper in Petr Cech, experience throughout that side as well, experience of winning trophies in that team. And they've got enough youth and exuberance and talent going forward to cause anyone a threat on that day, and they look incredibly ominous. And they're being drawn against PSG. Obviously, a huge amount of money's been spent at PSG to turn them into this force. They've got one of the most explosive front lines in European football. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is just an awesome talent. He can do things on the football pitch that very few other strikers can do. Got players like Cavani, Saint Cabai, Thiago Motta, Matuidi, Lavezzi. Huge amount of talent in that squad. They really have a large amount of talent. But I think Chelsea are going to be pleased with that draw. Like I mentioned, they've missed the big teams, the Madrids and the Bayern Munichs. They've got a team which is very dangerous on their day, but you're in the final 8 of the Champions League. You're not going to be getting Barnsley here in the Cup, are you? You're going to be getting a team who's very threatening. But you have to say, if Chelsea perform to their best, you would expect them to go through. It's not going to be easy, but I think as a Chelsea fan, you've got to be quietly confident about that draw. The other draw with a major English team involved in it, obviously because Arsenal and Manchester City have crashed out already, is Manchester United against FC Bayern Munich. And at first glance, this is a horrendous draw for Manchester United because they've got the defending European champions. They've got the side which is arguably the best in the competition. I mean, when you look at FC Bayern's team, there is just an array of glittering world-class players. Absolutely tremendous. And The real problem for me as well is the matchups in that team. If you can imagine seeing Patrice Evra against Arjen Robben, I mean, Patrice Evra's always been very, very good going forward, but especially the last couple of seasons, he's becoming more and more suspect defensively, and he's going to be up against either Robben or Frank Ribery, two of the finest wingers in world football. Really, really outstanding wingers. I mean, you can say what you want about Arjen Robben. Is he a diver? Is he too one-footed? When he gets the ball at his feet, he's devastatingly effective, and I really do worry for Patrice Evra in that one-on-one. If you look at FC Bayern's midfield as well compared to Manchester United, Man United, they've had to play 40-year-old Ryan Giggs to steady the ship in midfield, and he was magnificent against Olympiacos. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely phenomenal performance from a 40-year-old. He was technically the best player on the pitch. He got around the field. He didn't just sit deep, because you see some players approaching the twilight of their career just gradually sit deep. For example, Andrea Pirlo. Awesome player, but he doesn't really run around. He just sits in the centre circle and sprays passes. Giggs, despite his age, managed to find space for himself all around the field. He popped up in wide areas, he'd come deep, he'd link the play up with Van Persie and Rooney really well. He was very, very dynamic for someone of that age. But when you put him up against the Schweinsteigers, the Javi Martinez, Kroos, Muller, all of these players, that is just an outstanding midfield for FC Bayern. And if Tom Cleverley plays against that midfield, he's going to get torn to shreds. I mean, same with Michael Carrick. For me, Michael Carrick is a really good player, but he definitely needs someone alongside him he can depend on. He's a player you need a Yaya Toure alongside, for example, someone who's going to be good on the ball and strong and be a presence and help you dominate the play. Because if you're on top, Carrick is an ideal player for you, because he keeps it nice and simple. He'll keep the ball, he'll keep you ticking over, he'll launch you counter-attacks. Very, very good player. But getting that foothold in the game in midfield is going to be really difficult for United. So in saying that, however, you've got to be secretly pleased with the draw, I think, if you're a United fan, because if you look at Manchester United this season, there's been really bad results, there's low expectations, a couple of standout performances here and there, but a lot of bad ones along the way. Drawing the defending European champions, going away in the second leg, that could actually be a little bit of a blessing in disguise for them, because they can go into that game with not no pressure, because there's never no pressure in these sorts of nights, but certainly a reduced amount of pressure. If Man United had drawn, for example, Atletico Madrid or Borussia Dortmund, teams that, whilst they're still definitely effective, Dortmund have declined from their peak. Their peak was when they still had Goetze, and Lewandowski was still set at the club, and it looked like he might stay instead of now where he's definitely going. That was their peak. And Atletico Madrid, they're a fine team, but they're no Barcelona, they are no Real Madrid, they are no Bayern Munich. If they played one of those teams, the pressure would have been on more for them to qualify, because they could have been seen as more of the favourites, certainly more of the established world-class players, especially over a team like Atletico. Diego Costa's done very, very well this season, but he's not a Robin van Persie. He's not a Wayne Rooney. He hasn't got multiple major honours under his belt. So in that situation, United would have been under a lot more pressure. I think they can go into this game with just the shackles removed in some ways. They can just go out there and say, we are up against a phenomenal side and we're just going to give it a great shot. And if Manchester United play to their potential, that first leg at home, with a rowdy Old Trafford crowd, if the Old Trafford crowd really gets behind them that day, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to see United beat Bayern Munich. And then if you get yourself into the tie, you go away from home, anything can happen. We've seen already, Bayern, historically, in the last few years, have not been tremendous against English opponents. You've seen Manchester City beat them away in the group. Arsenal beat them away last season. Yeah, they've had a few European scalps here and there, but overall English teams have done well, not brilliantly. I mean, Bayern, you're never going to get a whitewash over a team like Bayern Munich, but they've certainly been competitive every time they've played them. And obviously the major example, Chelsea won the title in Bayern Munich Stadium. I mean, that was a complete freak one-off game where Bayern really controlled that game. It was just the pace and power and the sheer will by Chelsea to win that game, but win that game they did. They really did. And you've always got to give yourself a chance in European nights, and I can certainly see United giving themselves a chance. And And, you know, a lot of people have been really, really critical of Manchester United this season. I'm certainly one of them, you know. At times, Manchester United have been dreadful this year, you know, flat out dreadful. And, you know, my criticism's got to the stage where some people have posted comments saying, are you just biased against Manchester United? And I said, no, not at all. You know, I saw a comment, for example, when I was talking about the performance against Liverpool, where I said they were abject, and it was just the worst I've seen them play all season. And a guy left a comment saying, oh, well, you know, United shouldn't have had the third penalty given against them. Sturridge dived. You know, you're missing out key details. I'm like saying, yeah, that's true, but Liverpool should have had another penalty 5 minutes later, which wasn't given, so we'll say that balances out. And for the 90 minutes, Manchester United were the worst team. What do you want me to say? You know, they were really, really poor. And so I'm not biased against Manchester United. And when it comes to European football, definitely, I enjoy seeing English teams do well. You know, preferably English teams with English players in the teams, and not Manchester City, which has an English goalkeeper and then 10 other players who, you know, live in England, and that's about as much as it is. But, you know, don't forget, this is a World Cup year. This is a World Cup year. I want players like Danny Welbeck and Wayne Rooney and Michael Carrick and Phil Jones and Chris Smalling and, yeah, even Tom Cleverley. I want them to do well. I want them to go into the World Cup in exceptional form, and I want them to, you know, achieve things and be a force for England this summer. And one of the major ways that's going to happen is if United have a good run in the Champions League, or if not a great run, then certainly creditable performances. The last thing I want to see is Bayern Munich beat United 17-0 over 2 legs, and Welbeck have his confidence destroyed, and Rooney have his confidence destroyed, and us go out in the groups in the World Cup, because that would just be depressing. So, no, I'm not biased against United. You know, I tell things as I see them, and United have been poor this season, but like I've mentioned already, this is a European tie. This is a side which has got plenty of experience of winning European ties. Admittedly, they haven't produced it very often this season, but this is just a one-off game. Like I mentioned, great start in the first leg. I think it's actually good that they're at home this first time. And I know a lot of people say it's good to, you know, have the second game at home in the Champions League, so you can go away and get a creditable performance, and in front of your home fans you see the game home. And I completely understand that argument, but in this example I actually think it's a great thing United have been drawn at home first, because they could have conceivably gone away to Bayern Munich and lost that game 4-0, and then the tie is over. The tie is absolutely over. So by having this first game at home, if you go out there and give yourself a good performance, hey, even if it's 1-1, if it's a 1-1 or a 1-0 win, anything along there, as long as you don't lose 3 or 4-0, which would be unlikely, but as long as you don't do that, you are going to be firmly in this game of football. And then you go from that stage, a 1-1 draw or, you know, a 1-0 victory, you go to Munich with a chance. And if you do that and you have a fantastic individual performance on the night, or a great team performance, or Bayern don't show up, it's perfectly possible, you go through. So I actually think this is a good draw for Manchester United, and, you know, they'd certainly have a chance to go through. I wouldn't say it's a nailed on chance. I'd probably say it's still 70-30 in Bayern's favour. You know, if all things are equal on the day, Bayern are still the better side, but United have definitely got a chance in this tie. And like I mentioned, pressure's off to a certain extent. You're playing the European champions, expectations won't be too high. And I felt it was a little bit foolish of David Moyes to come out, because he said earlier in the week, after obviously the Olympiacos win, that United were going to, you know, we can win the Champions League, he said. That was just, it's the wrong thing. You can still see he's not used to managing a big club yet, because that's just the wrong thing to say. You know, you've had a very poor season by Manchester United standards. You've got destroyed at the weekend by one of your most serious rivals, probably the most serious rival in Liverpool. And then, yeah, you've played well against Olympiacos, but you know, at the end of the day, it's Olympiacos. You know, they are not one of the greats of European football by any stretch of the imagination. They've got an Arsenal youngster on loan up front, and he was their danger man at home. And the rest of the team, solid players, but unspectacular. So for you to beat them and then come out and say, we can win the Champions League, it's a step too far. For me, he should have done a standard Mourinho. He should have done a standard Mourinho when he came out and said, yeah, good performance, but a lot of good teams in the draw. We're still underdogs. We are the little horse in this race. All of those sort of things, just to take pressure off. You just got to do that, because the worst thing is to hype this and then lose, because then it just piles all the pressure back on. You know, this is a huge couple of weeks for Manchester United. You know, Manchester City coming up soon. You've got the Champions League. This is a season. No, it's not a season. Sorry, this is a month which could really make or break David Moyes. If he has a good month, Even if they go out against Bayern Munich, good creditable performance, win against Manchester City, solid performances in the league, then at least the fans can say, well, he's finding his feet, things are looking up, they're turning round. If Bayern Munich destroy them and Manchester City destroy them and a few other dodgy results here and there, the fans have got nothing to look forward to because it's just abject result after abject result. So Moyes has got to be a little bit less naive, I think, in certain situations. But for both teams, I think, they've got to be reasonably confident of giving a good display in Europe. For me, Chelsea should be favourites to go through. They're a really good side. Against Aston Villa, with my most rose-tinted Villa spectacles on, I'd still say Chelsea were controlling the game, and when it came to that first sending off, they were beginning to crank up the gears, and it was looking worrying for us. But you have to say, Villa played well. I'm not taking anything away from their performance, but seeing them live and then seeing them play in the Champions League and just control the game. They have a lot of very, very good players, and PSG are dangerous, but I still back Chelsea to win. And then Man United game, go out there, try your best, no pressure on you. You're up against the European champions. This is a period of transition, everyone's saying it, but you've got some good players in that side, and they haven't shown it a lot, but if they do on the day, then anything can happen. So, guys, thank you for listening again. Really hope you've enjoyed the video. Very, very interesting Champions League draw. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say about all of the teams drawn, and especially obviously Chelsea and Manchester United being the major focus of this video. But once again, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, have a great day.